بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته and welcome back to another Feed podcast with your host Shabir Hassan. Alhamdulillah, it's been amazing so far, and today's episode is going to be extremely interesting, especially with the month of Ramadan just around the corner. We have someone who has been involved in many different things, and you know what, it's gonna be difficult to kind of cover everything because he has a very, very impressive bio, mashallah. It's a brother that I've known for some time now as well, alhamdulillah. But something unique that he's been involved with, which we're going to speak about later, is a very unique and amazing community initiative which involves iftar, which we all look forward to every Ramadan whilst we're fasting, of course. But we're going to speak about that a bit more, inshallah. But it gives me a great pleasure to introduce our guest for today's show, none other than our dear brother Omar Salha. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you? You okay?
Very well, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Like we said, I was actually reading some of your bio, which is on the SOAS website, and I was like, wow, man, like, where are we going to start? Where are we going to start? Do we start with the research? Do we start with some of the projects that you're involved with? But alhamdulillah, it's amazing to have you on. And like I said, I mean, we've known each other for some time now, and especially through some of the work that you've been involved with in the community, which is amazing, which inshallah we're going to speak about. But let's start off with the main question, right? And I know it's a bit of a random question, but a lot of people don't know this about you, right? But the really interesting fact...
I'm quite intrigued. What kind of question are you going to ask now?
No, it's quite well... For those of you who follow Brother Omar on Twitter and have been following him, then you're going to know about this.
Oh, goodness.
But interesting fact is that you were involved in a football match and you scored a penalty, right? But you didn't just score any penalty against any person. You scored a penalty against none other than Mourinho, the current manager of Manchester United. I don't know how long that's going to...
Oh, he's left now, hasn't he?
Has he left?
Yeah.
Oh, my God,
Clearly
I'm so behind.
You're a massive
oh, yeah,
fan,
he has left. Wow.
It's been almost 2 months now.
You know what? Let's just ignore that, all right?
Let's edit that piece out.
All right. So the ex-manager of Manchester United,
Yeah.
I think he left maybe because you scored a penalty against him. I think he could have...
Not because of that.
But tell us about that experience, right? Scoring a penalty, and then you can tell us what that football match was all about as well.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was very surreal. Even just thinking about it and talking about it again every now and then. You know, what are the opportunities of or possibilities of playing a match, let alone, scoring a penalty against Mourinho, but also being on the same pitch as Sir Mo Farah, Paul Merson, Alan Shearer, Peter Crouch, Jamie Redknapp, etc. Ian Wright, Les Ferdinand, all these amazing legends of the Premier League and the English League. And that came about because of, obviously, with regards to what happened to Grenfell, the tragedy back in 2017. There was a game that was organised with Queen's Park Rangers Football Club to raise money. And a lot of celebrities, football players came together to put on a game and also invite people from the community to come together, and all the proceeds will be going towards helping the survivors and the bereaved families. Marcus Mumford, so he's a famous singer, was also volunteering in the area, and we crossed paths and we spoke, we exchanged details, and we were updating each other in terms of the volunteering efforts on the ground. Then he said to me, look, are you a football fan? Are you interested in football? And for those who know me, I'm very, very passionate about football. And he said, look, we're organizing a game in memory of the families and to raise money. These are some of the names involved. And I looked at him and I said, please sign me up. I'll definitely be honored to play with some of these amazing legends. And then he just, out of the blue, he sent me a message and he said, here's your shirt. It had my surname, Salha, and number 26, I believe it was. And he said, you're in the lineup. So I was like, you're playing, please. So ever since that time, looking back, I'm thinking, subhanAllah, how as a kid growing up, like most children growing up, they aspire to become a football player. And obviously the chances of doing that are extremely minimal. But alhamdulillah, subhanallah, for that brief moment, I felt like I was a football player. But it was also amazing to be on the same field with some amazing legends. The game actually ended 1-1.
Okay.
There was no extra time. And then they went straight to penalties.
Okay.
So Les Ferdinand was the manager for our team.
Yeah.
And the other manager was Alan Shearer.
Okay.
And Les was, for those who know, Les is actually from the area. So he grew up as well. And I played on the same pitches. He played on at the base of Grenfell Tower. And he said, look, penalties are coming up. Would you be interested in taking a penalty? I said to him, of course I'll be interested. Like, who wouldn't be, right? And of course, the fact that Mourinho is in goal.
Exactly,
so it's a no-brainer. You're like, of course I'll take it. And then when that happened, I think I was maybe the third or fourth player to take the penalty. And just before walking up to the penalty spot, honestly, I'm saying this stuff, I'm getting goosebumps because it's like, is this for real or is this fake? Right? But obviously, it's something I could tell, inshallah, my grandchildren in many years, bore them, but probably, at times I'll probably talk about this.
We'll just keep replaying this podcast.
Probably, exactly, Just go to the podcast. And the moment just before Mourinho is in goal and the referee says, look, put the ball down in the spot, take it. And I remember him coming towards me slowly. So I put the ball down and I turned around and walked back. So this is a lesson I always told, like, as soon as the moment you put the ball down, apparently, the first look, you look at the keeper, he knows where you're going. Okay. So there's a strategy behind that. So this is a good tip for anyone taking the penalty. Is that when you put the ball down, instantly turn around and show your back to the keeper. So they don't know exactly what's your first instant thinking in terms of where you'll be going. And I actually turned around, kept my eyes on the ball, and then the referee blew the whistle, and then the rest is history.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's not even just the fact that you scored a penalty against Mourinho, which was amazing. I remember watching the clip for the first time when he posted it. I was like, wow, this guy's serious, man. Can
you imagine if I had missed?
Yeah, that would.
We would not be doing this podcast.
Yeah, I wouldn't have invited
you. You would have, exactly. You probably wouldn't. Exactly.
I invited you just for that.
You definitely would have asked me the question as well.
Oh, no,
so,
definitely. Yeah. We would have just avoided the question. But it's not even just that. It's like you said. It's the cause that you did it for as well. Amazing cause, mashallah. That all of you kind of collectively you came together, and that's something that you have been involved with. That wasn't a one-off thing, Just that football match is something that you've also, mashallah, been involved with, which we'll speak about as well. But just on that note, by the way, because it seems like you know a lot about football. So were you actually seriously considering becoming like a professional football player or something?
Yeah. I mean, growing up, so I grew up in West London.
Yeah.
I went to a school which was very close to Chelsea Football Club.
Yeah.
They had a young team called Chelsea Raiders. So these are like underage minors who have a team. And I always used to nag my dad and say, look, after school I'm going to go and play football. And he was like, no, education is important, etc. Yeah. And so for me, my father is very passionate. So I suppose I took that from him.
Yeah.
And I was just very, attending football matches, etc. Back then, you weren't priced out of tickets. Now it's incredibly difficult to get into any game. But that was my sort of dream growing up to play football.
Because again, something else that interesting fact about yourself is that you're doing, mashallah, all of these things, but you're also a PhD. You're doing a PhD research at the moment. You're a PhD scholar at SOAS University, and I was reading up. Even your actual research has something to do with football. Yeah. Right, which is really interesting because I haven't come across before someone who's doing a PhD research something linked to football. So tell us a bit about your research as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm actually looking at the integration of Muslims in Britain.
Okay.
That's my overarching focus in terms of the thesis, and looking at how particularly sport and then football acts as a medium where people come together and tackling sort of the questions of community cohesion and integration, etc. And I'm looking at the role of Muslim football players as ambassadors of their faith. So an excellent example that we've seen is Mohamed Salha of Liverpool Football Club. And others before him as well, who paved the way for someone like him, where it's much easier and receptive for fans to accept someone who holds Islam very dear to them and very close to them. Yeah. And they view them as an ambassador, not only for their football club but for the community and for the faith. And the likes before him. You look at Demba Ba, for example, incredibly instrumental.
Yeah.
Before him, you had Frederic Canute,
Yeah.
who as well was an incredible beacon, and Abu Diaby of Arsenal Football Club.
Yeah.
If you recall, there was a documentary on the BBC which was looking at the Muslim Premier League.
Yeah.
And the role of Muslim players, and as well, looking at the question of halal food and dieting and fasting and Ramadan and prayer space and going out when the players are going out for celebrations. What do the Muslim players do? So it was very interesting, and alhamdulillah, that opened up a world where I was actually able to communicate with a lot of these football players directly. So I was in a quite fortunate, alhamdulillah, to have that conversation with them, which was upfront, and actually get a genuine perspective and questions, and just basically get into their sort of mindset and understand what is it to be like in the life of a football player and an elite football player in the Premier League. And what I actually found out was very interesting is ultimately they're obviously rated as whether they are good or bad players or how or on their performance, right? Yeah. So for instance, Mohamed Salah, all the success that he's done in Liverpool last year, had he, for example, scored 5 goals last season, we wouldn't be talking about him.
Yeah.
Right, irrespective of the fact that he is very, very close to his faith, and of the fact that he's practicing and he talks about it, and clearly illustrates this when he scores a goal and he does the sujood.
Yeah. Right.
But the question is actually, would we be talking about this if he scored 5 goals, or maybe he scored an own goal in a Champions League final, for example? Right. So on the contrary, to be good in the field that you're in, and also Islam allows you to do that. Islam, encourages you to be the best in whichever field that you are in. And so that is the main takeaway, was actually, yes, we have these ambassadors, these role models. It's quite interesting that recently I read that a football player was talking about knife crime, and actually how it's important that we shouldn't just sort of expect these role models and players and celebrities, if you will, to talk about this issue, because it's very lazy. Right, there needs to be more work which is done from a local authority perspective and the government, etc., on that level. Because it was a very thin line between sort of acknowledging that this player, yes, they are Muslim, they are practicing Muslim, and we're proud of them. Like Khabib, for example, at the UFC, you can only see that in terms of the win after Conor McGregor and the way he held himself afterwards, and the Twitter feed, etc. People were very, very happy and proud that he actually spoke openly about his faith, right, on a public platform, which many people wouldn't do because of fear of sponsorship being pulled away and all of these things. So it's a gateway where young people especially look up and think, wow, I have this sort of sense of belonging with this individual. I'm connected here with someone, which is a very powerful capital, for sure, if we can say, or agency. But to how much we laud that platform to them is another question entirely, right? They're not fuqaha, they're not as scholars in their field, but rather we have that connection because culturally speaking, there are a lot of affinity points in terms of our interests, our hobbies, how we live our life. So there's a correlation there. But there is obviously a distinction between, what is a scholar, a traditional scholar in every sense of that word, and what is someone who is actually modern in terms of their lifestyle, but also very close to their faith, which is guiding them.
Yeah, I think so. That's a good distinction that you made, because obviously, like, we're not saying it's a bad thing per se to hold these people in high esteem and look up to them. They're excelling in the field that they're in, but at the same time, we don't go overboard in terms of just following them in terms of being role models, and then kind of disregarding, like you said, the scholars and those who we should be kind of following in that sense. So that's really good. That's a really good kind of overview, actually, because especially nowadays with many youngsters, I feel like they do have this sense of I don't know who to look up to anymore, and I don't know who my role model is anymore. So it's very easy to kind of open up your social media and look at the feed, and then you see someone who's like got a huge following, or someone who's successful, however we define that, or someone who's excelling, albeit let's say in sports as well, football or MMA, or whatever it might be. And a lot of people, they find that attachment to them because they're, like you said, they're doing well, because we wouldn't be speaking about them if they weren't doing well, and they're excelling in that sport. And then B is because they're Muslim and they're openly talking about their faith. So do you think that that's kind of an important thing for any? We're not just talking about sports here now. For anyone who is a Muslim and is excelling and is and maybe doing well in whatever field they're in. Do you think it is important to actually openly speak about your faith, or do you think that actually, you don't have to always kind of speak about your faith openly? You can just kind of let your actions maybe do the speaking. What's your take on that?
I mean, personally, I would always the sort of the loudest message you can put out there is not, subhanallah, is not through the words that come out of your mouth, but rather through actions.
Yeah.
And I think we saw that video clip of Sadio Mane, for example, cleaning the masjid toilets.
Yeah.
He's someone who doesn't come onto television quite often, and he's quite shy. And Kante is another one, for example, at Chelsea. So these are exceptional football players. They've done very well for their country, respectively, and also for their club.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's just action. How you carry yourself, not only in front of the camera, but of course outside, behind closed doors, and with your teammates and with your family, etc. There's always this sense of pressure that we have to put up a persona in front of the camera, and actually live up to sort of ideals or what society expects of us to look like or to act like. But on the contrary, just be who you are, just be you. Really, is ultimately the best thing. Is that at the end of the day, obviously, we try to work towards a level of ihsan, right? Yeah. And the perfection of our ibadah is basically knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us wherever we are, in front of a camera or we're away from a camera, right? And of course, we all have faults. We all commit sins, etc. It's just the acknowledgement of those sins that we fall into, or the faults that we come across, and acknowledging them moving forward, and actually try to be as true to ourselves as possible. So yeah, I suppose it's important that. Focusing on what your profession is, right? Yeah. And actually just being a good human, really. Is it just boil it down to the very basics, is just to be a good version of you, right? Be a truer version of yourself, and wherever you may be, right? We're not confined by a space, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this world, and wherever we go, right? Whether it's in London or in a different continent, etc. Wherever we travel, right? You're carrying that those principles and those ethics with you, right? And for us, alhamdulillah, it is Islam. It is something that we believe is the haqq, and we want to hold on to, and also perfect ourselves, and actually illustrate what Islam teaches us through our actions, wherever we may go.
I wanted to also add, because we spoke about the penalty against Mourinho, and there's another a recent accomplishment as well that you can kind of add to the list, which is recently you delivered a TED Talk, which a lot of people, they like, TED Talks is like, I guess because of the reach and because of the impact and because I guess what's spoken about as well, a lot of people, they add that to something that they would want to accomplish and they would want to do. So tell us about how your recent TED Talk went as well, how that came about, what you spoke about, and the kind of feedback you've been getting from it.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. It was to be honest with you, it's funny you say that, because alhamdulillah, over the years I've delivered many public lectures, seminars, workshops, international conferences, etc. But this one in particular, I remember arriving the night before. It was in Bradford, and I was incredibly nervous. I was really, really nervous. And
even though with all the experience.
This is what I'm saying. So despite the fact that I've been used to speaking in front of 300, 400 people, and it's normal, right? It's once the adrenaline kicks in, then it's almost like autopilot. You're good to go. Yeah. But subhanallah, I was making dua, and I was like, man, why am I sweating? Why am I this is not good. What's happening? And I was very nervous, and I think I tried to stomach it in and not show people as well, which made it worse, because it's like there was no release. So I was just holding it all in. And then in terms of preparation, subhanallah, leading up to the event, I was incredibly busy with so many things, and I didn't manage to have time. So on a train up from London to Bradford, literally just sitting there, just going through some notes, etc. I arrive very late. I check into the hotel, and I'm the first speaker. So I told the organizers, listen, please, could you push it forward? I'm a bit groggy, tired, just come from London. And they're like, no, we want you to set the tone of the day. And I'm like, trust me, you don't want that. You don't want to take that risk. You don't know what kind of week or what kind of day I've had. They're like, no, you'll be fine. I was like, I won't be fine. But subhanallah, after the first 30 seconds, it was all just, speaking from my mind, etc. And the topic was basically looking at the use of space as a form of social interaction in our communities, and also, in particular, Ramadan 10 project. So, which is now, alhamdulillah, a community institution looking at promoting and perfecting the act of fasting, as well as raising the importance of understanding and appreciating Ramadan. And it was a great way to showcase our work over the past 7 years with the people of Bradford, where we have held an Open Iftar. So one of our key programs is the Open Iftar, which we run in Ramadan. And we held that the first time last year in Bradford, in Centenary Square. And inshallah, we'll be going back there for 3 nights as well. So that was basically the topic. And we all talked about a bit more about, the idea that, a sense of belonging is a very, very important and very passionate topic, which I share very closely and look at, is the othering of one another. So obviously the identity politics, in terms of, as a citizen, do I belong, right? Do I have a sense of belonging? Where do I belong? And these are questions which quite relevant, especially today with the current climate in with Brexit, etc., and with Europe, what's happening with the increase of the far right, anti-Muslim hate crimes at the highest level ever, and also what's happening in America as well and around the world. So this question of belonging, especially for this generation that we're all in, very young generation, where we're sort of second, third, fourth generation, and most of us have been born and bred in the UK, and it's almost like, do I belong? Do I not? If I look at the television and look at most media corporations, actually I do not belong, but all I know is my memory of growing up in this country, right? So, and there's obviously a sense of duality. Can you hold on to one identity, or do you have identities? Right? And the idea that, we all come from many, many different backgrounds. And the mere fact that you learn a new language, you've evolved your identity, right? The mere fact that you have studied else abroad, for example, for a year or 2 years, or worked abroad, your identity develops, it enhances. You're never fixed, right? So that's something which I'm actually going to be talking about as well next week, inshallah, when I fly out. So another conference, inshallah, looking at that, the Othering and Belonging conference as well. So that's sort of the angle that I was looking at. So alhamdulillah, it was very, very good in terms of the response. It was great, alhamdulillah. But of course, as always, you always look at rooms of improvement to work on, and
alhamdulillah. In terms of Ramadan 10 project, which you mentioned, of course, that's one of the things that I wanted to discuss, because I've been following over the years, mashallah, the progress that you guys have been making, and it's very impressive, because it's literally a first of its kind in terms of what you guys are focusing on. And I think it's amazing, just the fact that, because usually as Muslims who are observing the fast in Ramadan, you kind of take it for granted, especially if you've got a family of your own. Iftar time, usually it's the time for the family to come together and have iftar. But then when you think kind of deeper, and then think about, okay, you have many single students, for example, university students, they're away from home. What do they do at iftar time? Or, even people, for example, new Muslims, reverts, they've just come into the faith, and they might want to begin fasting themselves. And then it's like, but okay, iftar time, because it's not a nice feel. I've done it before myself, where iftar time, literally, you just, like, the adhan goes, either, like, let's say you don't get a chance to go to the masjid, you literally break fast by yourself, have some food. It's not a nice feeling. It's not a nice feeling, it's not a nice feeling to sit there and have iftar by yourself. Especially when you think about, subhanAllah, like, those memories, like, I was just with my family, like, last year, it was really nice having iftar, or I was in a masjid, part of a community, which I was raised in. It's a nice feeling. And then what you guys have kind of done is you've found that gap, and you've identified that, and now what you guys call it an open iftar, literally, where it's open for everyone, and not even just restricted to Muslims as well. You open it up to people of other faiths to come along, or no faith, which is very impressive. So I want to find out like more, because this goes back many years now. What was this like? How did you when did you come up with the idea? What was the kind of vision behind it? And then you can tell us about, of course, mashallah, like we're in 2019 now. It's been going strong, and it's grown and it's expanded outside of London. You're going to different cities now. So tell us about where it all began with RTP.
So the origins of it is, like, it's interesting. You talked about single students and international students as well, because that's primarily one of the main reasons why the idea came about. Back in 2011, myself and volunteers at university wanted to create an atmosphere during Ramadan where we can invite people of different faiths and non-faiths, but ultimately, a space for international Muslim students, where again they're away from family. They probably met some new colleagues and friends during their time studying in London, and through that we had about I would say 10 to 15 people, the first ever sort of Open Iftar we organized, and then that slowly grew and grew and grew. In 2013, we held the first campaign of 30 nights of doing an Open Iftar at SOAS University. And then we moved to a park which was close to the British Museum. And for 30 nights again, since 2014, we've been operating out of there. And alhamdulillah, after year upon year upon year, we opened up from just not only serving international Muslim students, but actually just having it open to anyone, right? So even rough sleepers, the homeless, walkers by, tourists, people of different faiths and people of non-faiths, like you mentioned. So alhamdulillah, up until now, we've served over 70,000 people across 10 cities and 4 continents. So that includes like the cities like London, we mentioned, Manchester, Bradford, Birmingham, Plymouth, in the UK, also Istanbul, Zambia, Toronto, Canada, and Portland, Oregon, USA. Wow. So we've expanded internationally as well. So we started with the premise being, actually, let's create a space where Muslims can come together and non-Muslims and explore the experience of the iftar. The iftari meal being obviously the meal that we have at sunset, after a day where Muslims are fasting during the month of Ramadan. And for us, you mentioned the key word, which was focus. And we got to a stage where we are right now, not through just waking up and knowing exactly what to do. It did take a lot of time and a lot of thinking in terms of like, what is it that we're trying to do really, and what is our key focus. And we found that, subhanallah, and we've experimented doing things during the year, and we found that Ramadan actually for us, I mean for me personally, is not a month in the Islamic calendar. And most people will be watching like, what? No, it is. And it is. But what I mean by that is it's actually a state of mind. Ramadan is about mindfulness. It's actually about using it as a springboard in how you can be every single day of your life. I mean, during the month of Ramadan, the axis of the earth does not flip upside down. The waves don't reverse. The sun doesn't rise from the east. It's just another day, if you know what I mean, right? It's just obviously it's a month, which is a blessed month, but nothing transformational has happened with the environment.
You don't wake up the next morning different. You're the same person, but
there is obviously the spirit of Ramadan, because obviously you go out to the community, you see family and friends, they're all fasting, they're all feeling the same thing. So actually a sense of community, right? Which is really, really an integral part of Ramadan, because you're praying together for Taraweeh with thousands of people. You're breaking fast with strangers, with family they've not seen for quite some time. You're giving charity. Many people are giving charity. Actually, the most we give charity is during Ramadan. And we're the top charity givers in the UK. And for me, it was actually about, well, hold on a second. How can we bottle this sort of state of mindfulness, right? And our state of mind, and export that outside of Ramadan, right? It's a challenge, but it's something that we love to thrive on these challenges and take on board. And for us right now, that's why we have Ramadan 10 project, which, was our initial journey. We decided to sort of keep that nice, the name in terms of our journey, and keeping the heritage connected, and keeping that, and now actually focusing more on, widening the idea of Ramadan being something which we can learn from, and also implement in our daily lives in terms of growth, in terms of spirituality, in terms of positive mindset, in terms of patience, which is an integral part of Ramadan. Patience, self-discipline, holding back on terms of the desires that we want. Developing our understanding on Ramadan itself, knowing that actually it's split into thirds: the first 10, the middle 10, the last 10. Forgiveness, mercy, and of course savior from the hellfire. And then you've got fasting, which entirely in itself you could sit down and focus on the beauties of how do you perfect your fasting. Most of us may not know that actually in fasting there are 3 levels to fasting. There's abstaining from food and drink. There's abstaining then from what is sinful in terms of what you see, what you hear, what you say, what you touch. And then finally, abstaining from all of those things, as well as being able to have that mental and spiritual connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So actually there are 3 very deep levels to that. And I think that, what we're saying boldly is Ramadan is actually a cure to a lot of the existential questions that we come across in our lives. For instance, social isolation, depression, not knowing our sense of purpose in life. And Ramadan is such a beautiful month because it allows you to go onto a journey leading up to Ramadan and the month itself and post-Ramadan, where you have rediscovered yourself. You have rediscovered you. You have rediscovered your purpose. You have unlocked this amazing potential in being able to capture the spirit and the beauty of Ramadan in allowing you to grow as an individual. Your mindset has shifted, right? From maybe being pedantic or pessimistic to now optimism, which in Islam in itself is a culture of optimism. The Prophet Muhammad was the biggest optimist who stepped foot on this planet. And so there's a lot of takeaways for us. And for us, the challenge is how to package that and then, sell it back to the community in the sense of, look, there's a lot of amazing lessons and tools for us here to take away from. So alhamdulillah, like we're launching a workshop seminar where we're actually looking at developing, the understanding and appreciation of Ramadan as well as the perfection of fasting. And that's open to everyone. Whether you are the British Quakers, whether you are Christian, whether you are a company or corporation in the city, it's very light, it's very accessible to all because we believe that Ramadan actually has those answers, which for many of us, we shy away from answering. A lot of the questions that we talk about in terms of our purpose, etc. And, it's there as a very easy toolkit and we can go out and deliver these. And in addition to that, a little sort of teaser in terms of Ramadan is we're going to be allowing people and communities, we want to encourage them and mobilize them into holding a smaller Open Iftar in their homes, work, school, or community. And that's called My Open Iftar.
Okay.
Nice. Where people can sign up, whether it's ISOCs as well, right? Because what we don't want to then go into a very culture, and this is very interesting how over the years I've realized there's a reluctance when you see a product doing well. There's almost like, well, they can do it, and then I can sit back and there's almost a service, if I can say, which has already been provided for me, and there's a set standard, a quality, right? And actually, it's almost like when you come across a brother or a sister who are incredible in terms of their akhlaq and like the way the Islam is, right? Yeah. And you think, wow, that's amazing. That's the ideal. I can never reach that. Therefore, I'm going to give up. Right? On the contrary, what we're saying is, look, our journey is something that we want to share with others and actually show that everyone and anyone can get up and get mobilized and actually hold these events. So that's our sort of gateway to, training the community up and down the country to holding the, local My Open Iftar. And being able to give them the training and the toolkit to actually invite people to their homes, to their workplace, etc. And it's just all about, furthering that understanding and appreciation. And this year, this is exclusive, by the way, so we haven't planned this before.
Okay, nice.
But inshallah, this Ramadan, we're going to be doing something we've never done before, right? So
You're inviting Mourinho or something.
No, that would be, you know what, I should invite Mourinho. It's a good shot, actually. Let's see if he'll accept that. Remember me, I'm the one who's got the penalty against you in Brentford.
Like, reject.
No. I see the 2 blue ticks and that's it, nothing else. So this year, for the first time ever, inshallah, in London, we're going to be doing a large chunk of London. As people will know, like we pick one location, we do 30 nights, right? But this year we're doing something different. So we're going to be doing potentially 20 to 23 nights in one location, and we're moving to a new location, so away from the ones that we've been at before. And the last 7 nights of Ramadan, we're going to be doing a mobile location for every single night and in a different location.
Oh, nice.
So
it's like a tour.
Yeah. So it's a mini London tour.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, the places we're going to be going at, inshallah, if Allah wills and gives us life to witness Ramadan and take benefit from it, especially those blessed last 10 nights, it will be something exceptional, bi'Iznillah ta'ala. So hopefully it should be really exciting. I'm really excited. And the team is excited because we've not done this before, and it's almost like it's a massive risk, but we want to go for it, inshallah. No. Try to recreate history.
Yeah. It sounds amazing. And one key word that you mentioned was space. And this is something that even when you go back to the seerah, Prophet ﷺ, he always aimed to provide a space for the Muslims at hand. So in his community, for example, beginning in Mecca, you had Darul Arqam, isn't it? That was like the first ever space for the Muslims where they would go in a house next to Safa al-Arqam radiallahu anh, and then teaching and learning would take place. Everyone's welcome to that space. And then obviously it developed in Medina. You had now the masjid, and even the masjid itself, when you study the model of the Prophet's mosque, that was also open. You had the men there, you had the children there, you had the women there, you had everything, so different activities going on. You had non-Muslims coming. So it is amazing how even in our tradition, this is something much encouraged, which is to provide a space for the community. So that's exactly what you guys are also doing. Because, someone may argue that why don't you just hold it in a masjid? Because many masjids are already kind of doing something similar, which is they're holding iftar. But I think one thing that's important for people to also realize is that for a lot of these people that are what we mentioned, international students, single students, new Muslims, etc., a lot of them, they're completely new to this community. So for them to just roll up to a masjid, which already has established a community, is very difficult for them to kind of, we're not saying it's impossible, but it's just very difficult for them to kind of mix with that community when they kind of already feel like outsiders, if that makes sense. But then with what you're doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you already have like-minded people there. So if you're someone new stepping into this space and into this environment, it's very easy to mix because everyone's already looking for that. Everyone's hungry for that space, and everyone's hungry anyway because they've been fasting all day, right? So they're waiting for food. So I think, and also you guys have the RTP Talks aspect as well, which is you're not just coming for food, but you actually have speakers each night lined up from, again, different kind of backgrounds and different professions, which is also amazing. So what do you think about the importance of providing a space for Muslims, even though we have the masjid, which is brilliant, but a lot of people, they're looking for something different, like-minded people. How important do you feel like that is, especially within our context in the Muslim community?
Masajid in this country are such an important and pivotal network. It's something we can definitely never, negate or anything like that as such. So we should definitely work in partnership with the masajid and actually look at developing their programs, enriching their programs to be more outward looking.
Yeah.
And I think, mashallah, so, through the, we saw the Visit My Mosque initiative, for example, exceptional highest number of mosques who signed up this year. We saw the great feedback and the engagement they have in their local communities, which is great. Honestly, I know we have it really, really bad in terms of the sort of, what's happened in New Zealand, of course, and obviously the as I mentioned earlier, the increase of anti-Muslim hate crimes, Islamophobia, and we haven't even talked about institutional discrimination and Islamophobia, etc. But in terms of what the community is doing in terms of response and being optimistic and actually looking to contribute to their community. The list is endless, mashallah. Honestly, in terms of the efforts of our community, and this is why I struggle a little bit when people say, our community is not doing enough. Actually, on the contrary, there's many amazing young people, emerging leaders who are doing some incredible work. Perhaps they're not given the acknowledgement or the platform or maybe the sort of resources to excel in that and actually grow. Maybe there are certain gatekeepers which don't allow them to do that. And I think for us, it's about actually how do we look to each other and empower each other, right? Collaborate with each other and actually affording that space where let's not rely on others to sort of almost give us the solution to get to what we want to achieve, right? Up until now, we've all done what we've done, out of our own time and resources to get to where we are. So why is it that we expect now suddenly that someone to come and say, here's an easy ticket to get to what you envisage to do? Yeah. And on the contrary, all of the rizq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, that having that sincere, genuine tawakkul is important. But I mean, going back to the point of obviously the mosque and spaces, I think it's really important that if we can think strategically and innovatively about the spaces that we have in our community, right? And just going beyond space as well, even the museums and galleries in this country, right? When it comes to the month of Ramadan, what sort of programs or projects are being conducted, right? Is our heritage, you know, as British Muslims, when the month of Ramadan is the holiest month, right, of our faith.
Yeah.
Is this considered in some way? Is this acknowledged in some way, artistically, or whether it be through poetry, or whether it be through a seminar, or whether it be through an exhibition, or whether it be through an iftar, right? So this whole thing that we're trying to create here is a culture where in Britain, across Britain, and across all institutions, whether they be large or small, is to look at, you know, the conversation around Ramadan and opening it up. Right.
Yeah.
So actually, masajid is part of, you know, one sort of this spectrum, if I can say, of our target audience. Okay. I mean, our ancestors have been doing iftars for how many years? Right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So it's not new in the sense that actually, you know, we've all been doing these iftars, right?
Yeah.
But actually, to think, you know, this is the vision of looking at beyond just the masjid and having 10-15 people. Actually, can this be a permanent fixture where when the month of Ramadan enters, that we know that actually all the museums, etc., acknowledge this month, right? And actually, this feeds back into, let's say, for example, we held the first ever Open Iftar at Tate Britain in 121 years, right? Tate Britain holds the largest British art collection in the world, okay? I didn't know that. I've never been to Tate Britain until we held this Open Iftar event. We did it in collaboration with an art agency, and they were focusing on the community garden. And this was for the day of Arafah. So obviously most of us, it's an optional fast, but it's very much encouraged for us to fast on this day. And it's actually the holiest day of the year, right? The holiest nights are in Ramadan, but the holiest day is the day of Arafah. This was a good opportunity for us to engage and actually ask the question for someone called Abdurrahman, Muhammad, Mustafa, and for someone called John, Peter, or Simon, right? When they gather and come together and attend an Open Iftar at Tate Britain, right? The question of heritage, identity, of knowing one another, breaking down barriers, building bridges between different communities is taken into consideration. You know, at an institution which, you know, of course, you know, it lauds itself as a leading institution, right? And that's where we find the sort of an access point to enter into these institutions to actually better inform staff as well as visitors and members and the general public about Ramadan. So for us, it's more about actually taking into consideration, you know, our sense of belonging, our identity. You know, what does that look like, right? What does that look like for us? I mean, now I'm sure, you know, if you visit, and we see this more. We actually with modest fashion now and the hijab, etc. For example, Nike, you know, the Nike hijab, which, to be fair, has been happening for a number of decades. It's just the fact that now it has a Nike tick or a swoosh. Now suddenly it's in fashion, right? But we've had this in our community for several decades. Yeah. But even though, despite that, you know, you still have young sisters and old sisters who go to the shops and see, you know, a hijab being sold at a Nike store, right? It's almost like a sense of acknowledgement, right, and acceptance that you belong in society, right? Of course, I mean the motives behind that is you're a consumer. You know, that's the ultimate thing. The motivators are not actually, you know what, we love your faith and we want to have hijabs, etc. They may very well do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we need to look at, you know, we need to be strategic in our thinking and thinking outside the box, right? And stop having this tunnel vision and being able to look at the bigger picture of actually, you know what, we can, you know, work collaboratively here and think with innovative solutions or ways in which we can acknowledge that the halal pound, right, is a growing industry, right? It's in the $1 trillion industry as we speak and increasing, right? Whether it's food, fashion, tourism, etc. And actually our access points into those is, well, okay, look, Ramadan, we're charity givers in Ramadan. Muslims need to buy food, etc. in Ramadan, right? They need to shop a lot in Ramadan, right? So why don't we almost like have a win-win situation here, actually promote Ramadan, but actually bring it back to its essence. And this is where we are incredibly careful with making sure we don't have that message of Ramadan diluted completely through just only fundraising and donations.
Yeah.
Right? I know, like most of us, that in Ramadan is a important month to drive for fundraising and donations, because it really touches our hearts and pulls on our heartstrings to give money during this month. Correct?
Yeah.
So, but what our mission, one of our mission objectives is to bring it back down to the spiritual understanding and the core message of Ramadan. Is not irrespective of whatever color T-shirt you're putting on a live TV channel to ask for funds. But actually, although that's important, we also don't want to be burnt out after Ramadan and completely miss the whole point of the month, right? The month is there to transform us as individuals, where we're actually focusing on looking at the deeper manifestation and spiritual messaging behind it, which actually allows us to think more critically and engage with ourselves as human beings and develop further during the year to allow us to reach another Ramadan as well, right? And actually, that's one of the things is, as well as educating people of other faiths about the month of Ramadan, we need education as well within our the British Muslim community.
Sure, yeah.
We need a lot of re-educating about what Ramadan is and what fasting is and why do we do it and what are the lessons for this, and actually you need to prepare yourself like anything for an exam, etc. The moment Ramadan hits, you can't just wake up and like I'm fasting and that's it.
Yeah.
You got to ease your way into it. And mentioning that, obviously next week is the month of Sha'ban. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to fast most of the days outside of Ramadan in this blessed month of Sha'ban, right? And it's a good way to train yourself in lieu of Ramadan coming up. So yeah, I mean that's sort of our the way we've, alhamdulillah, like over the past couple of years have adapted our strategy, our work ethic, and in terms of the way we want to approach the month of Ramadan and what we want people to go away with and learn and take away some very, very important points on.
Alhamdulillah. One word you mentioned, I just want to bounce off, is the word vision. So it's really important, especially, I mean, for anyone really, whether you're running, a community initiative, a social enterprise, you're an entrepreneur, whether you're, I don't know, even a manager, at a workplace, whatever it might be. But vision is something important, because we've just heard about your vision with RTP and how now through your collective efforts as a team with volunteers and everyone else involved, how it's kind of grown and you've developed it. It's not just that you've stayed as it was and as it started. You've actually developed it and you've added more ideas. You've brought ideas to the table and you've kind of developed it that way. So there are many people that are watching or listening that also have ideas. Like all of us, we have ideas, especially nowadays, right? MashaAllah, like the Muslim community is a very creative community. We have ideas, but a lot of people, they kind of struggle. Okay, I've got the idea now, or I have a vision, I want to do something, and then they kind of start making excuses. But I don't have the resources, I don't have the money, I don't have the manpower behind it. So what would your advice be to just anyone listening or watching right now that has a vision, has an idea? What would your advice be, other than the fact that just go and do it? Like, because that is a piece of advice, like, stop thinking and just go do it. But like maybe some practical steps that helped you, because I'm sure you didn't have all the answers when you started. As you kind of started, maybe people came on board, maybe you matured in terms of your thinking and your ideas. So what advice would you give based on your own personal journey to those people listening to develop something?
I would say meet the world where it is, and that's your starting point, and go from there. Quite often we want to start with the finished product. And we want to say, this is what I'm after. And that's it. But your access point to enter, in order for you to achieve that vision, you have to meet the world where it is right now. You have to look at where you are in terms of your stage, and never ever make the mistake of comparing your journey with someone else's journey. Right? The resources they have had, you may not have been blessed with. The context they have had, etc. Their own spiritual, their own personal journey in life as well. So I would say focus on you. Scale and rank or grade yourself on your own. I mean, every single one of us is incredibly unique and has an amazing story to tell, right? And I truly believe in the fact that every single one of us has a wonderful story to tell, right? And has a wonderful idea that they want to actualize. but sometimes society almost plays down your hopes before you even thinking of the idea. You know, Noam Chomsky said something really interesting, which was, you know, the way the system is structured is that when you go to university and you finish and you graduate out of university, you have this massive bill on your head, right? You know, in America, it's like £60,000, right, and above, and that's like the bare minimum if we're going to do an undergraduate degree. Yeah. And for us here, you know, if you graduate and you've got maybe a £10,000 bill on your head to repay for a master's or an undergraduate, for example, that's the only thing you're concerned about, right? So definitely there are infrastructures put into place which are dampening or holding us back to be creative. Because, if you can only imagine a movement which is creative in its approach to solving a lot of issues, right? Not having to worry about the finances or the debt they have at such a young age, where you have that massive passion and burning energy inside of you at your core to want to go out and change the world. Suddenly you graduate, and 5 years down the line, you're in a 3-piece suit doing slave hours, and you're like, what's happening here, right? Yeah. And suddenly you're a different person to where you started off with. So I would say listen to your inner voice, right, and let that be your guiding compass. I think the question about mentors is something which is always thrown about. I think it's important, but again, appreciate that every single human being on this planet has gone through their own journey, and will have their own sort of outlook on life, and they come to a conclusion based on the experiences they've gone through. Right. So, you know, alhamdulillah, you know, there are a lot of mentors I look up to and I ask for advice, etc. But I also appreciate that they are coming from an angle which is very, you know, contextualized within a particular area. Never, you know, go out and take someone's advice golden and that's it. Take it on board. That's a form of leadership, is that you take on board and you take the good and leave something which may not benefit you directly. Yeah. I mean, so, you know, definitely go out and do stuff. Yeah. But I think meet the world where it is. Yeah. Look at your own journey and set realistic goals. Think collaboratively. You know, quite often we think about, you know, creating spaces and also holding on to these spaces and not wanting to let go. Why not? Why not take the risk and look at opening up opportunities, and look at opportunities. And this is very important. There are opportunities out there where you can initiate a conversation. Before you know it, you know, you then, you know, set onto a wider vision, right? It's only through these conversations that you have with people that you realize you're unlocking something else that you have never thought about. Major corporations do this. You know, they have a set vision which they work towards, you know, 3, 4, 5 year vision, etc. But actually, they look at something which is happening, and especially now in our climate, where with digital social media, etc., everything's happening and moving very, very fast, right? Our sort of 5-year plan. That stuff is nonsense. You know, I mean, everything is changing so fast. You can have a document that you want to work towards, right? But you never know what's going to happen next week or next month, right? So you have to be adaptive in that nature. And major corporations are the best at this. You know, they're in the tech industry or fintech, online industry. They are incredibly adaptable and flexible, despite the mass of the organization, where they are able to flex their muscles and move and actually adapt. And I think younger entrepreneurs are catching on to that now. They're realizing, actually, what I want to achieve is not through one technique, but through a number of different techniques, which maybe I wasn't aware of. And actually, it's about unlocking those, you know, techniques and bringing people on board who have the skill set, who are more knowledgeable than you, who are able to excel in that shared vision. So there's a lot there. But I mean, I think ultimately, if I had to bring it down to one thing, it would be, you know, stop worrying about this background noise around the world, etc., and stop worrying about this person is this age and they've already done this and they were listed on this and they were listed on that and they received this accolade and they spoke at this event and I wasn't invited and all sorts, etc. SubhanAllah, like that's insecurity speaking, right? Bring it down back to the center point. What have you worked on? Celebrate your work. You know, quite often we don't enjoy the process. We say, I've had a stressful week, but is this something you want to do for the rest of your life? Yes. So then enjoy the process. Quite often we don't enjoy the process. Like, subhanAllah, like we hired our first members of staff, you know, 2 months ago. MashaAllah. You know, and for us, it was like, it's a milestone. Someone said to me, Omar, that's a milestone in your company.
For sure.
And I said to them, well, subhanAllah, I never thought of it that way. But actually, you enjoy the process. Even any challenge that comes across to you, you look back and think, alhamdulillah, that was meant for a reason. I've learned from it and I've moved on. So that as well, not always we're the biggest critics of ourselves. The world is cynical in itself. So you need to be championing yourself and surround yourself with people who champion you. That's very important. Positive mindset is definitely a must.
No, I think that's a good piece of advice. I mean, like you said, everyone's on their own stage of the journey. So it's very easy for us nowadays to just look at someone else who's already done something and maybe has been doing it for 5-10 years, and then to compare your progress to theirs, because you haven't even started yet. So it's easy to think, oh wow, but mashallah, brother Omar, you've been doing this for 5, 6, 7 years successfully. I want to get something started, but I haven't even. At least you've got the experience now. You know, you are also at the same stage, and many people who are now, who we deem to be successful or doing something well, like we said, the first thing we spoke about today was excelling in the field. You know, sports, for example. You know, I can't compare myself to Mohamed Salah now, right? I think, yeah, you know, I'm going to try and score a penalty against Mourinho tomorrow. You know, when I haven't even, you know, trained and have that experience. So I think that's really important. One of the final things I want to speak about is, now that, let's say, you've got something going and you've got other people on board, and especially with something like this, which is a community initiative and something where it's something which other people now naturally, other people would want to get involved, and B, you also need other people to come on board, because there's only so much you can do yourself or just between a group of friends, right? So you have something like, especially with many charities or many initiatives, which is volunteers. And, you know, some people don't like the term volunteer. They like to call it something else, whatever you want to call it. But let's say you have now team members, you know, colleagues, peers, people on board. I mean, I guess another challenge now, because now that you're growing, is how to kind of, you know, collaborate and how to work with the team, how to keep volunteers motivated, for example. So that it's not just a one-off buzz thing, you know, just in Ramadan, it's a buzz. Straight after Ramadan, it's like, yeah, we just disappear for a bit. So as someone now who has that experience, you know, you've seen a team now almost, or a group of volunteers or people you've taken under your wing. Again, what was that experience like? What kind of advice would you give to people in terms of dealing with fellow, you know, team members or colleagues and volunteers?
It's a very good question, and it's something which many people struggle with.
Yeah.
I think, look, in terms of volunteers, one thing that I constantly tell volunteers in terms of like I've volunteer inductions, or whether it be at just before the evening where we're hosting people, like 300-400 people every evening, is the message of time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by time. Wal asr. One thing that none of us on this planet, whether we are trillionaires, billionaires, zillionaires, is that we cannot give back time. So the moment an individual, a living human body, right, has gone out of their way to commit to a project which or initiative or any work that you are doing, which is very close to your heart, and that person has come out of the way and said, I believe in this, i.e. I believe in you, is an incredibly humbling juncture in your life. So for that reason, we, you know, over the number of years, we have looked at our program internally in terms of volunteers, and we actually asked them, you know, alhamdulillah, you know, 100% of our volunteers have said they want to come back and volunteer, and they would recommend it to others. But it's about that sense of ownership, and also allowing them the ability to grow and develop, both spiritually as well as actually putting them in difficult situations to think on their feet.
Yeah.
And it's about that culture. You know, when you create that culture, like in any workplace, right? Whether it's volunteers or not, you know, you could have members of staff that you're in charge of, or you're managing volunteers, or if you're a manager of a football club.
Yeah.
You have to instill a culture where everyone feels they're involved. Where everyone feels they are 10 feet taller, where everyone feels that actually they belong, where they know that their work is being acknowledged, that their work is taken into consideration, that their voice is heard, that actually you truly do think well about them.
Yeah.
There isn't a solution, if I will, in terms of like waving a wand and that's it, it'll happen.
Yeah.
I think it's about culture. It's about, you know, if you're genuine and sincere, and you come across and you know, those ideals are coming across to those people, and you're winning their sort of hearts and minds, in that sense, then they will completely give themselves to you, and they'll say, look, I commit to this, right? And you know, with that, alhamdulillah, from our journey, again, something else that we are launching this month actually is a academy program for our volunteers, where they enter into Ramadan 2019 to volunteer, and then they graduate out of this program in Ramadan 2020. So it's almost like a school of Ramadan.
Okay.
And the premise behind that is our volunteers who commit their time is that we give back during the year through spiritual talent and leadership training, right, and development, where we want to give back workshops, etc., running parallel twice a month. And part of that process is you go through that, and then you graduate, and you become an ambassador to the organization, where you're then able to be, you know, sent to speaking initiatives, engagements to represent the organization. And that's a lifetime membership, if you will, to be an ambassador. And then also, for those who want to, they apply to sit on the advisory panel. And that is an opportunity where we are being genuine and sincere about this and saying, look, you could enter as a general volunteer, you stay with us for a year program, and then you graduate, and then you can apply to sit on the advisory panel and actually be, you know, in a boardroom where you're able to shape and mold the future of this organization, which you have given yourself to. And I think for me, you know, another thing which is with my sort of academic career as well, and lecturing and public lectures, etc., and I find it very, of course, you mentioned that you alluded to this earlier, where you can't juggle all of these things at once. Yeah. And there's a very important point which Richard Branson mentioned, and actually I gave this advice to Elon Musk of Tesla, and saying, like, you need to think about delegating. You know, the delegation is an art in itself. It's a skill set in itself, right? Some of us, unfortunately, want to hoard everything, micromanage everything. You know, I personally, you know, when I first started my journey, I was very much involved in everything. But alhamdulillah, I'm coming to terms with actually, you know what, let things happen, you know, let people grow into their roles, you know, bring forward suggestions, push them to do so. I had a member of staff the other day actually ask and say, I'm quite astonished that you actually are taking on board my opinion, or you're asking me. And I was like, well, of course. You know, this is the culture, the team, the culture we want in our team, in our staff and volunteers, is that we want people to be these leaders who are able to go on and move on, and not to stay full-time forever with us for the rest of their careers. On the contrary, if we can be a stepping stone to people to go on and to excel in their respective careers and to actualize their vision and dreams and goals, and if we played a little contribution in that life, which goes on to be an amazing story to tell, then alhamdulillah, that would be a really amazing KPI or feature for us, you know, that we look back and think, alhamdulillah, we were able to, you know, nurture this person and actually allow them to grow and develop and become that leader. So yeah, now that we've obviously got more volunteers than ever, more staff, more people involved, I've now had to take a step back and actually delegate to others to assume this role of leadership. And alhamdulillah, through doing that, you're actually creating another round and group of amazing leaders, inshallah.
Inshallah. No, I think that's amazing, and something that, like we said, it's not just you know, people who are leading community initiatives, but it could even be, you know, managers, people who are bosses at work, because it's all part of the same thing, which is
the key word is empathy, honestly. I mean, irrespective of whether you've got a degree at Yale or Harvard or Oxford or Cambridge, the key root word here is empathy. If you can empathize with your staff, your volunteers, you have that at your core, compassion, and it works both ways, because that's the culture that you want to create. That's the sort of energy you want to have in your building. So you walk into your office and everyone's psyched up, it's very, you know, ready to go, right? And away from this sort of dictatorial mindset that some of us have, and unfortunately young social entrepreneurs have this, is that because this is my idea and therefore nothing can happen, because this is how I'm the one who put this. And the key word is, look guys, the word I is such a toxic word. The word is about we as a group, as a team, right? And that's your nafs speaking, that's your ego, I, and actually you should be thinking, hold on a second, you know, if we all will face that day where we will die. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, you know, call on the angel to say, take this ruh, and that's it, done. then what, right?
Yeah.
It's about leaving that sort of legacy, inshallah, that we can have others who can then go off and do amazing things, and hopefully it becomes a sadaqah jariyah for us.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, Brother Omar, there's so much more that we could discuss, but alhamdulillah, it's been a pleasure, and I think we've covered so many different areas and aspects in terms of, you know, whether it's having a vision or managing a team, volunteers, or, you know, just so many different discussions of growing initiatives, etc. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Alhamdulillah, because of the viewership and you know the kind of family we have here at Elmfeed, it's worldwide. So it's not just something which is limited to people in the UK. So inshallah, maybe some people listening across the world, they might also be interested in you know, their own Open Iftar
inshallah,
in their respective countries.
Definitely, yeah.
So for sure, for those people who are interested, inshallah, make sure you check out Brother Omar's work and the work of the Ramadan 10 project and the Open Iftar team, inshallah. And like I said, you never know, inshallah, you know, he's already done it it's already been done in Istanbul, it's already been done in other countries and continents. So who knows, there might be something similar coming your way very soon. So do indeed check out the work of Brother Omar Salha, the RTP team, inshallah. They're all over social media. And Ramadan is, of course, going to be, you know, around the corner now, so it's going to be an exciting time, inshallah. So we're looking forward to seeing more of the projects.
Inshallah. And we look forward to hosting you as
inshallah,
well. To hosting you and
sure.
the brothers and sisters behind Ilmfeed as well to come and join us. I know they showcased some of the Open Iftars last year, which was great. So we want to have them come back as well.
Definitely. Inshallah, for sure. Jazakallah khairan, Brother Omar. It's been a pleasure. And to everyone else watching, inshallah, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and keep an eye out for more podcasts coming your way. From your host, Shabir, it's been a pleasure. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.